Hey there, Mindful Millionaire family. So happy you're joining me today. I have this phenomenal interview with my friend Heather Pierce Campbell. She's an attorney. We're talking about money, we're talking about legally taking care of your business, but really more about the inspiration of things that you can do differently going forward, whether that be talking about money with your kids, talking about money in your business, and especially creative ideas of how you can really get things going in these interesting economic times. I know you're going to love it. You can check Heather out at legalwebsitewarrior.com, but dig in. It's going to be a fun ride, and I can't wait to hear what you take away from our conversation. Enjoy. Happy New Year. Thank you so much. And both of us working in you in law, me in finance, oftentimes end up helping people when it's not the best of circumstances. Something's come up, something surprising. There's a question of like, did I do the right thing? And times that we're in right now are probably amplifying that because people are looking at their situations and saying, oh, maybe I haven't protected myself enough, or how I haven't planned for the future in the way that I'd like. And so creating a safe conversation for folks to come in and listen to us talk about some issues that might not be so comfortable to talk about normally, that we're willing to give them the inside scoop to the challenges that come as we run businesses, as we
Mhm.
build a future for ourselves and for our family and for, retirement or whatever that might look like in the future. And one of the things that I would love to start with is a question for you about your own relationship with money, because this has a way of kind
Mm,
of unlocking things and letting us get to know you very quickly.
mhm,
But first, tell us a little more about you, but also how your relationship with money has evolved.
I love that, and I love your invitation into a conversation that may not feel comfortable for a lot of people, and that's okay. I think the important thing is that we still try to have it and still give ourselves the opportunity to think about things in a new and different way, which I think in times like these it's really the most powerful way that we can serve ourselves.
Mm,
So my relationship with money started young in life. I had a dad who grew up very, very poor. So he came from a family of 11 kids, and I would say really had a strained relationship with money himself starting early in his life. So his parents regularly moved. His dad was a cattle rancher, and pretty much on an annual basis, they moved to a new location. And some of the houses they lived in didn't have running water. And, there was a summer in his, I think it was seventh, eighth grade year where like they just sent three of the boys around, him and a couple of brothers around his age to go fend for themselves for the summer, like go live in the hills and we'll see ya in the fall. And so he really had a childhood experience that would be much like many of our grandparents, right? Kind of a pioneer lifestyle, like really scrappy subsistence type of living. And so he came with his own set of ideas around money and his own money experiences. And as he had gotten older, his dad had promised the kids in that family that if they worked on the ranch, and many of them missed school to do that, that he would pay their way to college, right? And of course, time for college came and couldn't pay their ways. And so, my dad ended up working on the railroad and, just having a very interesting experience to figure out his own way and pay his own way through life. And so he was really determined not to make the mistake of his father. And so because I think he probably felt like the last thing he wanted to do was to promise us anything and not be able to deliver on that. So when I was 5, I got the lecture. I was starting kindergarten. I got the lecture around, you know, you've got to, if you plan to go to college, you've got to make good grades, or you have to save a lot of money, or you have to become an extraordinary athlete, because I'm not going to pay your way. So, and I was a pretty serious kid. So as a 5-year-old, I was like, oh, like I got to be on this. Right. And so I remember getting my very first wallet and starting to save, very early. I remember when I had saved $5, which for a kid in the middle of Idaho, when, chores were like 10 cents or 5 cents each or whatever, like it was a pretty big deal for me to reach $5, and I lost it. Right. And so I lost this wallet. I was devastated. I ended up finding it, several weeks later in the jockey box of our car. And I've learned since that jockey box is, I think, specifically an Idaho term for glove compartment. So, you know, but it started me on a path young of doing odd jobs as a little kid. So even, when we moved to Washington, I was 7 or 8, and I'd walk the neighborhood and knock on doors and ask, could I rake leaves, and could I, do odd jobs to make money, and had a couple of paper routes by the time I was in 3rd grade. And, was buying and selling cars at age 8, like between 8 and 10 and 11, had bought and sold multiple cars. And so it started young. I felt a tremendous amount of responsibility very young. And because I was a pretty serious kid, like I really felt the weight of that. And so, fast forward through junior high and high school, I worked all the summer jobs, but I did the other things too, sports and academics, and, was very involved. But by the time I was headed off to college, I had multiple scholarships. I basically went on full ride scholarships to school, and then paid my own way through law school. And so, I would say that compared to my peers, most of my peers did not have the experience I had around money. So I had, a very different perspective, because at age 12, when we hit, what was 12? Is that 7th grade? 7th grade in our family, we had to start paying for clothing and all of our extras, so like if we wanted to go to the movies or do things with friends, or needed more shampoo and conditioner or personal products, we were responsible. We basically got room and board, right? So so I had a very different perspective around money, and it meant that my friends that would wear Guess jeans or whatever, I never understood. I remember being like, why would you pay $50 for a pair of jeans? I don't care how they look. Like, I was shopping at Costco and getting the $5 pair of jeans. So anyways, it just meant that, like, by the time I graduated the high school, in addition to having scholarships because I worked really hard academically, I'd saved maybe $20,000 by that point. And for me at the time, a kid in the 90s, that represented a lot of hard work. And then I also had a whole bunch of money invested in a collectible vehicle at the time as well. So that really was my early path and relationship to money.
Wow. It's funny because some people might be looking at that conversation when you were 5 years old as like abuse. And other people are like, wait a minute, this is the secret to like creating a self-sustaining child, right? And
That's right.
because he was straight up with you. I mean, I've talked to so many people over the years who wish their parents had been more forthcoming. I mean, just shared more
Mhm.
about money from an earlier age. And
Mhm.
this would be an extreme, but fascinating to see that you went on to fulfill that potential. He was straight up and he gave you plenty of time to say, you're going to do this, and or you can, it's your choice.
Mhm.
uh my son, it's so funny because it's making me think about my son right now, and my daughter too. My daughter ended up getting about half of the costs in California,
Mhm.
the scholarships and stuff. So about half the cost to pay for school, and graduated not, I think she owed $5,000 and we were able to pay it off at the end. And then my son's about to start the journey, and um, we just set very high expectations about school grades and that sort of thing, and that we'd figure out a way. And he got admitted to all the schools he applied to in engineering, and he got the first awards letters that pretty much cover tuition in all the schools. And now we're working on, would there be something else to pay for room and board?
Mhm.
And we've been very clear, like, we can't control the outcome, but you can control the inputs. So you need to
Yeah.
apply for every one of these. And I helped in finding the ones that applied because, yeah, I'm doing what I can, but I can't apply for them. So we're in the midst of this process. And I said, there's
Mhm.
7, and I really do expect you to apply for all 7 of these because I've screened them. And there were like 200 things to choose from. And I knew my son, and I knew he probably wouldn't go through all 200. Like, served it up, and now we're gonna, fingers crossed. But like, the expectation that you don't get things for free, they don't just come and fall
Mm.
from the sky. And I think that that's a great metaphor for all of life. Like, you got to take
Mhm.
care of yourself. You can't depend on other people. Prince Charming isn't going to come and like save us from, the idea of working and making money and preparing for our future. But how do
Yeah.
you think all of that's affected you as a business owner? Like, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, a couple things. I mean, I think that, I look at that early childhood experience. I even look at my own personality, right? So it's a combination, I think, of, especially from a parenting perspective, of what lessons we choose to teach and pass on, but also it is really about knowing our children. So, for example, with my kiddos, and my oldest is he's got some challenges. He got an autism diagnosis when he was 4, and then an ADHD diagnosis when he was maybe about 8. And so I'm really clear that academics are not the way to measure his potential, right?
Mhm.
And so we're not having the conversation around, we expect you to get good grades, blah, blah, blah. But we have lots of conversations around creativity, around creating value in the world, around understanding our own unique strengths. And
Mhm.
how do we lean into those? How do we study those? How do we observe those so that we can make choices that are really in alignment with who we are, and our potential and what we enjoy doing, so that the process of creating value is less about, because for me it was definitely about hard work. Money's hard to come by. You got to figure this out. You're on your own, right? And that's not to say that my dad wasn't there along the way to like impart his lessons and his stories. And you know what I mean? He wanted us to do well. It was not that it was like, sorry, kids, check you later. It wasn't like that. But it was very much, he wanted us to learn how to be self sustaining. And I'm grateful for those lessons. I don't think I would have changed it. And what I will say is, we just recently started my son on um, basically an allowance system where we sit down and we have a list of agreements that he's going to do that week, right? And it is about teaching the same self-sustaining principles, but in a different way, right? And according to him and his personality and what he's capable of. But getting that independence rooted in, like, the last week he's walked himself to school, which is a pretty big deal for us. And other families might be like, oh, my kid's been doing that for years. Understand that I have a child who, even last year, like even during COVID, if he wanted to take a different route in the neighborhood and we thought, okay, we'll just try this and see how it goes, we ended up with a missing child, right? And it's like super panic mode. And this is, anyways, so this is a big deal that he's walking himself to school and that we trust him to do it, right? So we're making strides. And so long as he does these agreements, he earns 1.5 times his age weekly, right? Which is about $15. And it's really cute because we put some structures in place around what we'd like to see happen. So, like, save half, utilize the other half to spend, however you want. But we talk about what makes for good spending. And his belief system is way different than mine, right? Early
Mhm.
on, even now, like when we talk about, he really wanted to get a fountain pen, like a calligraphy kind of old fashioned ink pen, right? he found one that was like $40. And I was like, well, buddy, maybe there's one that's really good, but maybe not $40 because you don't even know yet if you like writing with these, right? So we talked a bit about this, and he's like, but mom, money is so easy to make. And there was a part of me that wanted to argue a little bit about, like, I wanted, there's a part as a parent, like you want him in some way to go through some of the lessons that you go through. But then I really had to stop myself. And I was like, I love that you have that perspective, because guess what? Money is easy to make. If you know how to create value, it's totally easy to make. And you are super creative. So I love that. Yes, it is. And I realized, like, I want him to have a whole different mindset around money. He needs one based on who he is and based on where we're at in the world and based on his own path. He needs a different mindset around money even than I had.
Mm,
So that's
so
been a
good.
powerful lesson to me as a parent, and to like really step back from being in my own journey and realizing he's going to have a totally different journey. He's got a totally different brain. He's extraordinarily creative. He's a very powerful little person in the world. I fully believe he is going to be super capable and probably a phenomenal entrepreneur. Like, he's a kid that, like, won't be told what to do anyways. Right? But it's anyways, it's been really interesting to recognize, like, I have to, because I've also shifted my own beliefs, right? Let's be clear that in my adult life, part of what we all go through is looking at, what beliefs did I really inherit about money from my own parents? Are those mine? Is that really mine? And what I've learned about myself is that I really have an abundance mindset. I came into a family with a scarcity mindset, but as an individual, I really have an abundance mindset, and I'm a creator. I love creating. I love creating value. I love serving. I love doing things that create way more value than if you do them in the traditional way, right? So if my son can take that even a step farther and like really get into the creativity and the value creation conversation, I mean, I think he's going to be extraordinary. And I don't
Mm,
want to limit his potential with the limits of my own past beliefs.
so much wisdom in that. So, so cool to realize and to be cognizant that that's actually something that you have the ability to choose and to affect. And I think that my children are very different, and yet I can see the seeds that my husband and I have planted. And
Mhm.
we've been the opposite of what even you described. Like when the kids made money, we would let them decide 100%. And I'm more of the fail big and learn from the failures versus the structure. And so, but also the lessons were so different from my oldest daughter, who's now 25, to my 18-year-old. And just watching the evolution, and also realizing that as long as you're willing to have the conversations and talk about money, I don't actually think you can go wrong. The only place you can go
Yeah.
wrong is just ignoring it completely and not talking about it, not making it like something that's comfortable to be discussed. And that's
Yeah.
on us to do. Like, we can't wait for, I mean, the kids can ask about it, but I think it's like, be comfortable with talking about it and you're going to be okay. Like,
Mhm.
that's the moral of the story that I've
Well,
learned.
it's so true. We all learn differently. We all are going to learn differently, even from the same experiences, right? The takeaways are going to be different, even having the same experiences. And so, as a mom, I'm clear that kids come a certain way, like they come the way they come. And certainly we can nurture and help shape and guide them, but they're going to learn what they're here to learn. And I think in many ways that path is self-selected.
Hmm.
I look at my siblings, right? They had the same parents, they got the same lectures, very, very different outcomes between all of us across every area of life. Those paths are self-selected. What we really hear, what we latch on to, what we take away with. And so And I agree, like the structure, even for my son, we recommend a structure, but we don't hold him to it. If he wants to spend all of his money, we're not stopping him. We're just having him think
Mm,
about it so that he is in charge of that money that he made or created or whatever. And then if he's out of money and he wants to do something that requires that he have like that will be his learning lesson. So we're not
yeah.
going to stop that from happening, but we want him to kind of generally understand the guidelines so that if he wants a little structure, he knows how to have it.
Yeah. Yeah. We were definitely, my son was a spender, big spender. And then he ran into that challenge of like, well, I want this and you should buy it for me. And it's like, well, I'm not buying it for you. You've got plenty of money coming in. Right. And then realizing I'm like,
Yeah.
let me explain how this works. You have to keep some and then it builds over time, like really basic stuff. Like, and
Mhm.
after a while, you'll have this bank of money and then you can buy those more expensive things. And I kid you not, like, it was like one conversation. And then all of a sudden he became this massive saver and then figured out how to be like, well, you could pay for it. Like, I don't want to spend my money on it, but if you want me to have it, then you should buy it for me. It's like, oh my gosh. Okay. So you switched out and figured that he could kind of manipulate his way into getting what he wants,
Mm.
or at least trying. So I'm like, he's a fast study, but a great quality.
Mhm.
I'm curious for you, going into law and then
Mhm.
there's this path, this traditional path in law where you go to work for a firm, you eventually become a partner, you kind of play by the rules, and and I'm sure there are plenty of people who can make that life work, but to me that was always like, ooh, that would be a tough path, kind of like me
Mhm.
going into the corporate world and then realizing even though I could make a lot of money, there were a lot of things that didn't work for me. And I'm curious for you, like, what can you tell us a little bit about that evolution? Did you go into the traditional path and then become the person who said, no, I'm going out on my own and this is why? Just curious.
Mm. Yeah, no, it's such a great question. And I think really important for us all to look at that within the context of our own path, right? Because I think so often people don't know they can do it differently. They just don't know based on career choice, maybe based on parenting, just based on life experience. They think like, oh, there's just this one model to follow, or this is how it's done if you want to be X, right? And I think so often that's how society works is you begin a path thinking it's this wide, and then you finish your schooling or you start in on the path and it feels this wide, right?
Mhm.
And you have to kind of rediscover what it is that you're there to do. And so for me, during law school, my first year of law school, actually the first quarter of law school, my mom was diagnosed with glioblastoma. And so she had terminal cancer, within the first quarter of my law school experience, which meant that the first year of law school, I spent Monday through Wednesday going to law school, traveling home to Walla Walla, the other side of the state, Thursday morning, and spending, Thursday, Friday, Saturday with my family, with my mom, and then traveling back to Seattle on Sunday to prepare for law school again, Monday through Wednesday. So I really split my year. And when I was home with family, I did not open a law book. I did all of the homework, the exams, the everything, right? Monday through Wednesday. It had to fit in that time for me to be able to make that work. And so I had a very unusual first year of law school compared to what is typical, but it really changed my perspective, not just on law school, but dramatically on life. Right. I watched my mom basically die very young and work really hard up until that point for not a lot of reward especially from a monetary perspective, right? Like she really worked hard alongside my dad and never truly got the benefit of all of that hard work. And so that was a devastating thing to watch. And what it meant is, she passed away the start of my second year of law school, that by the time I graduated law school, I was just not willing to do a traditional path. I was very unwilling to do somebody else's work that I didn't care about, even for a short time. I could not buy into Like, you have to go work for the man and do the thing and walk this challenging path to get the right kind of experience so that you can eventually do the work that you love. Just that storyline did not make any sense to me. So, I actually launched my practice right out of law school. I graduated, yeah, which was really unheard of at the time. This was in '02, and it was the worst time. This was right after 9/11. This was the worst time in 30 years to graduate law school. Like, it was just a terrible time to begin a law career. So the recessions, and we've been through several since, right? I mean,
Mhm.
multiple. Like, this is probably the third one really since that time.
Mhm.
And um it, I've never been a quote unquote traditional person within the law. I was not a traditional person, even in the way that I looked for work, right? A lot of my peers were still sitting around sending out resumes and just waiting for a phone call, just doing this very traditional outreach. And I, from the start, I knew even in the worst economy, which, arguably people might say is coming here or we're in the midst of now, um, work comes from other people. Doesn't matter, doesn't matter the area even. Work comes from other people. And so with that simple premise, I started a spreadsheet and I put myself on a path of connecting face to face with one person every day, Monday through Thursday, maybe Monday through Friday. Some Fridays I would take off, but getting face to face with another attorney in Seattle, whether it's for coffee, for lunch, and doing this outreach. And I, by the way, I had zero connections in the legal world. I didn't have attorneys in my family. I didn't come from Seattle. I didn't know anybody in Seattle. So I literally was starting from the ground up. And within a couple of short months, I had a full book of business, right? I had more projects than I could do simply from that one strategy. And and all I did was just be actively interested in getting to know other people, their practice, what they liked about their work, what cases they were working on. If they ended up in the news, I called them. If I was like, I was selling my car one time and the guy that inquired mentioned that he was an attorney, I was like, oh, can I take you to lunch? I'd love to hear about it didn't matter who you were. If you had a name and you were an attorney, I was probably knocking on your door to find out, could I connect with you and learn more? And just through the simple act of doing that one thing, being genuinely interested in other people, and also being clear up front. I'm a new attorney. I have very few connections, which is why I'm really actively doing outreach and trying to get to know other folks in the community. And I'm interested in referrals and getting work, right? So I was good at clarity and I was good at connecting. And like I said, within a very short period of time, I had more work on my plate than I could handle. And that one strategy kept me sustained for years and years, right? While I built my practice. So,
Wow. Can I ask you a
yeah,
question about that?
totally.
It's fascinating because a lot of times we'll think of like who are the referral sources. Like, how did you
Mhm.
know that attorneys would be referral sources? Like, what caused you to think that or even attempt it?
Well, because I thought, first of all, there's work out there that some attorneys are just unwilling to do, right? Regardless of if it's just like a little bit too far outside their practice area, or it's something that maybe just requires too much research and they needed help with that piece, or maybe it was just too small of an issue or a matter for them to take on, right? And because I was a newbie and I was pretty scrappy, I thought there's a lot that I can do to help people, even if it's just researching and letter writing or whatever, right? And so I between that and then, printing off, this is funny because it was really like, I feel like I was just getting to know email at the same time, right? I printed business cards and letterhead and sent like old fashioned letters to everybody in my database like, hey, I've graduated law school. I hadn't even passed the bar, and I was putting myself out there like available for work. And because I didn't find out until November, I had to take the bar in July. Didn't find out until November whether I passed, but I thought, well, at least in the meantime, I can begin, sowing seeds and doing research and blah blah blah. And anyways, it worked, but I knew that attorneys, um, I just knew that that's where work was going to be coming from, was other attorneys, because, there's enough work. And I also didn't buy into the whole like, zero sum game, the pie is this big. Like, I always just felt like there's enough. It's just about connecting with the right people so that you can see where the need is. Right. And
Hmm.
so, and the other thing I believed is that if you get to know somebody face to face, and they see you, they hear from you, they really feel like they know you. And I know you can't achieve that in one lunch, but they know of me. And before they didn't even know of me, like, you're 1,000 times more likely to get a follow-up phone call like, hey, I had this piece of extra work come in that I can't handle, or I need help with this research project, or my sister has this problem and I don't do that. Would you be willing to help her? I mean, it came from a wide variety of places, but it didn't really matter. And truthfully, the smaller the project, probably the better for me earlier on, because it gave me really wide exposure to a variety of topics and allowed me to help people in really interesting ways. It was just fascinating, but I loved the learning. And that's the other thing, is that, that's just my personality. I really love learning. And so that part didn't feel hard to me.
Yeah. It reminds me of the power of keeping a beginner's mindset too,
Mm,
like getting past the pride that might be involved. And sometimes it's easier, like you said, when you're just getting out of school. But I'm thinking about a whole bunch of clients and people I know where we get in our own way because we have all these reasons why what you are saying helped you couldn't work for us. And so I
mm,
love this abundance mindset that you're sharing with us, that could, if somebody's not getting the kind of traction that they want in their business right now, like what would keep you from reaching out to people that are in a similar line of work, who, like you said, there could be a ton of different reasons why it could be a match made in heaven and you don't know. But if you're not trying and getting yourself out there, you will never know where there might be possibility and opportunity.
right. And you don't know if you don't ask. Like, I had a friend last quarter who'd gone through a physical struggle, right? It resulted in a head injury and really had not spent much time in his business at all. And he just reached out. We became friends over the year last year, and he reached out. Oh, you want mommy to come help you in a minute? Can you give me a few minutes? Sorry, my 5-year-old is homesick for
Yeah.
like the 89th day. I'll help her in a minute. But he just reached out, and this is somebody like you would think, oh, he's established, doesn't have any problem getting clients, right? And the thing that I loved about what he did is he just said, hey, here's where I'm at. Right. I went through this physical journey. It was really challenging. I really didn't do much for my business at all for an entire quarter. And now I need new clients. I need some additional sales. So do you have any connections for me? And he just asked. And I was like, it's a really powerful demonstration that at every level we have to keep asking, right? Which is why
Mhm.
even and as a beginner, and I think part of it, you're right, you do have to set aside pride aside, or like, oh, I should be at a certain level, I shouldn't have to ask anymore. Like, no, no, we're all human, and when people ask, you want to help. And so I made,
Mhm.
maybe 6 or 8 introductions for him, and maybe half of them I think have become clients or are on their way to becoming his client. Right. And he was just like, thank you. You were one of few who actually followed up and like made the introductions, and they're all powerful introductions. And I just thought, it's for me, it's just so much to going back to remembering what it is to be human. It's less about
Mm.
business and it's more just about being human. What do we need? How can we ask for it in a way that people will support us? And how can we be clear from the beginning so it doesn't feel like, because I think some people just feel weird about asking and then it comes out weird, right? Like, get over
Mhm.
the weirdness, be clear, have the goal to be clear about what you need and what you're looking for, and be upfront about it, and people will want to help.
Oh, I love this. This is so much fun. Your approach, you do something in your business that constantly blows me away, and I'd love to get why you do it, and I'm get it recorded while we're talking, but you open up yourself to your community and have a like, come ask me questions. I'm available to you. And you've been doing this for a while. And could you tell us more about this and like why and how do you do it so that it doesn't lead to you feeling like, I don't know, taken advantage of or just burnout or what have
Mm.
you?
Oh, that's such a great question. So, at the start of COVID, it was literally March. COVID hit here in Seattle in February of 2020. We were ground zero, and I could just see this. I don't know. In my mind, it was like a tidal wave coming for small businesses. And nobody was talking about it. So I sent a newsletter out, like I think it was March 3rd, like, hey, here's what COVID means for your small business, because that's all I serve is small businesses and entrepreneurs. Um, and then at the same time, I thought, what else can I do to support these folks who I knew, like, your primary need right now is if you are not already online in a heavy way, you got to get there, right? So my big goal for even launching the conversation series, and I called it Ask Me Anything Live, and I showed up weekly the first year of COVID. Every week I went live every Monday, and I invited everybody on my list, and I told people about it, and I had people show up weekly throughout COVID. There were a couple weeks where I did not make it because of, holiday or whatever. Um, but my goal was simply to serve and help small business owners specifically pivot. I know people got so sick of that word, but transition quickly into the online space, think differently about their business so that they could continue to thrive and not be one of the ones that really felt challenged by what COVID presented for so many. So, and what I learned in that process, because I did it every week for the first year, and then I transitioned to monthly, which I've been doing the last, I don't know, almost 3 years, right? So it'll be 3 years in March. Is that I could use those calls really, really effectively for all the people who showed up regularly in my inbox anyways, like, hey, I have a quick question. Great, come to this call. It was a way to condense the periods of time in which I provided that type of support, but also it was a relationship builder for me. And I love that piece, right? Actually connecting again, face to face, live with another human and around the world, and be able to try to answer their questions and support them in some way. Or if I didn't know the answer, I probably knew somebody that knew the answer and I could make an introduction for them, which I regularly did. And what I know from that is that people remember you when you show up to serve, even if there's not an immediate benefit for you. People remember you, they remember that resource, they will refer, they will connect, they will point people to you. And so became a great grassroots kind of campaign for me. And then it also was a sales call. I could serve people immediately with their questions and answer questions. And in the instances where I already had something built that did the very thing that they needed, I could point them to that resource. Oh, check out this, or come to this, or, whatever it was. Like, this bundle is specifically for where you are in your business, or you just need this one template I have. Go get it here. That's going to be the fastest, most economical way for you to meet this need. Right. And so it really became a call, and has continued to be a call that does a lot of different things, right? Builds relationships, allows people to connect, allows me to provide we can cover a lot of questions in an hour. And then I can sell so much of like what I've already built. Right. So it's been a great thing to add.
Wow. And it doesn't wear you out because you're comfortable telling people these are the products that I have, or hey, this is more in depth.
Mhm.
If you want to take this on, you're going to need to work with me, or like whatever you need to do. Like,
Mhm.
you're just very sincere and honest in the moment. And you feel comfortable. This
Mhm.
is not just you giving, but this is also you saying, yeah, I have a business and there's ways that you can
Mhm.
pay me for stuff.
Totally. Yeah. And it really is less about selling, but really matching people to something that's going to help them with their problem. Right. And so,
Of
of course,
course.
you have to believe in your business to be able to sell. Right. But so often, I've got the thing that they need. If it's a question of the type that I serve, right? The type of businesses that I serve, I've probably built the thing already, you know?
Mhm.
And so it took practice because I didn't sell the first many, many calls, really. I served, right? But then once I developed the routine and I realized, oh, I have this opportunity on the call to educate people about resources I've already created as well. I could start to just kind of slip them in like, oh, yeah, you're at a phase of business that a lot of my clients get to. Here's what I recommend for that phase. Here's the tools and the resources that I've built that would be a great fit. And it just ends up like dropping a link in the chat or briefly mentioning it or covering why it's such a good fit. Right. And it just really naturally evolved into that next level of resource conversation and, sales without being salesy.
Of course. And that's once a
Mhm.
month now.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
anyone who's on your email list gets invited to that,
Mm.
right?
Yeah,
Which
I
is
I
super
have
cool.
never right, and I've never opened it up to the public. The Zoom bombings were happening, right? Like, right after COVID hit and people figured out like, "Oh, there's all these open Zoom rooms, and I can just show up and do this terrible stuff." I was not interested in that, so I've never, like, posted the details publicly. You do have to be on my list and stay on my list to get those invites.
Ooh, okay. Well, that's a good. I mean, that what do people do to be able to do that? Because this is going to be the best way for folks to come into your world and learn
Mhm.
from you, be able to see what you offer. What would they do to get signed up for
Totally.
that?
So yeah, you can sign up. There my Ask Me Anything live calls, and I have a link directly to that. If you just go to
Mhm.
Legal Website Warrior, just how it sounds, so there's no tricky spelling, legalwebsitewarrior.com/ask me, and let me make sure that that forwards to, yeah, so it's just ask me, and then, forward slash. That you can sign up, and that will drop you onto my list, and you'll get invitations to that monthly call. If you're looking for an immediate resource, I'm happy to mention one more because for folks that are like, oh, that's fine. I don't really want to wait for the next Ask Me Anything live. I need to get started now understanding my business better from a legal perspective. I've also got my Legal Basics Bootcamp, which is a great resource. It is the map to your business from a legal perspective. And it's the same map. I give this map away for free. I educate, I speak to audiences. It's the same map that my clients pay me $2,500 for to just walk them through in their own business. I do what's called a business risk assessment, and it's the exact same map, right? So it's a great way to go through. It's a little mini video series, like 5-minute videos once a day for 5 days. It will introduce you to my legal basics. I have a like a five bucket system that I walk people through so they understand the category of their legal needs and where to look for for how to protect what's going on in their business. And it just makes it super simple. They come away, I think, feeling like, oh, that's accessible, that's doable. That took it from like kind of, hard and nebulous to like, oh, so clear. And I know where things fit. And I just need to start walking myself through this. Right. So that's always how I have wanted legal support to feel is much more accessible because it can be.
Yeah, well, both you and I just we didn't get into it so much, but I want to make sure we're leaving on this topic. Heather Pierce Campbell and I both feel like legal is really important, but for many
Mhm.
people, I mean, you could call me out if I'm not right, but my clients, it's like the afterthought, not
Mhm.
happening in the order of events that it really needs to. So the
Mhm.
sooner you can be exploring all the things that Heather makes available to you, the better, because if you go and build your business without paying attention to the legal aspects, you won't go back later and fix it until a problem happens, and problems are very expensive when they come
Mhm.
when it gets to a legal issue. So how'd I
That's right.
do on the endorsement?
Yeah, perfectly. The analogy that I let people ponder on is it's a little bit like running a racetrack and you can choose to leave the hurdles there, or you can take them away, right? If you're a great hurdler, awesome. Most of us are not good hurdlers. Right? And so if you want to build quickly and be positioned to scale, you remove those hurdles and you make sure that you've got a strong foundation that allows you to build high. And without it, you're going to stumble along the way. It's going to be a more expensive path. It's probably going to be a slower path, and that's just the truth of it. So people get to choose, but of course I'm here for either one, and I serve folks who are super proactive, a lot of folks that come from previous corporate experience, previous businesses, and they know that they need to take it seriously, and so they do it from the start. But I also serve folks who are like catalyst type of personalities, like, I'm just going to build it and I'm going to run as far and as fast as I can, and then I'll deal with the problems. Right. I mean, I recommend against that because it is more expensive, but I serve those types as well because from the standpoint of what the business legal foundation looks like for my clients, it's the same and so even if we have to go back and fix some things, it's not this unknown map, right? And that's, I've got a whole program designed for people who've scaled quickly. They're in the 1 to 3 million in revenue range, and they're playing catch up. They're going back and filling up those gaps that they skipped on the way up the mountain.
So good. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. It's been super fun. And I hope that folks are taking away all the stuff that I'm taking away from it, which is the abundance mindset, how we can try new things, how we can drop away the pride, we can reach out and ask for help, and that the possibilities are truly endless for those who are willing to put themselves out there.
Totally. Yes, just ask. Just be willing to ask.
Thank you so much. And again, next best place to go, like your
Mhm.
website would also give them a resource to do all of this and learn about how to
Totally.
work with
There's
you.
a ton. Yes, there's a ton on my website. People literally could spend hours self-educating on my website and it would change the way they approach their business. But legalwebsitewarrior.com, I've got a contact form, tons of resources there. If I can put a plug in, if you want to come, be in the conversation around businesses and business building. I love my podcast as well, which I recently had Lisa on. So
Yes.
your episode will be coming out. Come find Lisa's episode over on Guts, Grit, and Great Business. And that's one of my favorite places to spend time as well.
Beautiful. Thank you, Heather, so much for being here.
Thank you, Lisa. I really appreciate it. So good to see you again.